You're listening to The Breakfast Show on Faith FM with Skafy and Lindsay. This is the second hour of our program. We have also producer Tish commanding the desk with us. And what are we going to be talking about, Lindsay, today?
We are going to be talking about birth rates in South Korea.
Birth rates in South Korea, okay. And I'm going to be talking about a country refusing passage to another country in times of war.
Oh, okay. Alrighty.
So that's going to be interesting. Particularly, we're going to be talking about why did France deny certain aircrafts from the United States to fly over their territory.
Okay.
And that has caused a significant diplomatic incident. Well, we'll look into that. And then on 7:35, we are going to be talking to the CEO of a non-for-profit organization that helps save trafficked children.
Oh, wow.
It's going to be super interesting.
Wow.
Super interesting. So you stay tuned for that one. So let's start with a quiz question. And also the answer to the quiz question, the previous one.
We still have that answer we're waiting on.
Yep. Time for the answer. So the bird's wings that were likened to those given to the women of Revelation 12 were those of eagles, and that can be found in Revelation 12, verse 14.
Oh, very good.
And our new quiz question is a bit more simple this time. Maybe. We'll find out. In what hour did Jesus die? In what hour did Jesus die? If you know the answer, we have apparently not one correct. We have no correct answers in our studio yet. 0491 064 669. We have one correct answer in our studio now. Well done, Lindsay, and two correct answers. Well done,
Got a little
Skafy.
confused.
Yes, same here.
If you also know the answer, please text us in 0491 064 669 if you know the hour that Jesus died.
Okay.
Yeah. Did we give the same?
No,
answer?
my first answer was different from your first answer.
Okay. All right.
I said, I'm going to say it.
Mm-hmm.
My first attempt was the 6th hour.
Oh, okay.
And yours was the 3rd hour.
Yeah.
But it was none of that. Then we tried again and we got it right.
There we go.
Yeah, so which one was the hour that Jesus died? 0491 064 669. Now, tell me about birth rates in South Korea. What's happening there?
So, there is a very teeny tiny town in South Korea that has put on a celebration because they've had their first newborn in guess how long?
How long?
Yeah, like just throw out some numbers. How many years do you think it's been?
3 years.
3 years? Bit more than that.
5 years?
Bit more than that.
12?
Bit more than that.
20?
Not quite. 17 years.
Wow, 17 years without having any babies in town.
Yeah. That's so crazy, hey?
Yeah.
So this this tiny town had 2,600 people a little while ago. It's now dropped to below 2,000 people.
Okay.
They've got this one little newborn for the first time in 17
it's like
years.
the star of the town.
Yeah. So much so that they literally put banners up across the streets in the middle of town to celebrate. Celebrating we have a newborn in town. That's hectic.
What?
So
why are South Koreans not having babies?
Well, this is a reflection of what is going on in South Korea in general. So since, I think, 2014, there have been just like plummeting birth rates in the country. It is, I think, it's the second least fertile country in the world, just following after North Korea, of all places. So...
Oh, North Korea.
North Korea
but
is
then
the least fertile.
We can't really get reliable statistics from North Korea.
We can't, but...
So, wow.
Yeah, so South Korea is like officially considered the least fertile country in the world, but very likely it's actually North Korea, depending on the data. Mm-hmm. And this has been going on for at least like 9 or 10 years now, probably even longer. And I was like wondering, like, why is this? And so I did some digging and learned about there's a lot of economic factors playing into this. So South Korea is a very expensive place to live in general. Like, it's very densely populated, and people tend to work like easily 50-hour weeks. Like, overwork is the norm there. And women actually are experiencing a very major gender wage gap there. So only about 2/3 the same pay as men receive for the same jobs.
The same job. Wow.
Crazy. And then childcare costs, if you have a child, are exorbitant. And so if a woman gets pregnant, she basically will quit her job, because even though there have been some encouragements to companies to provide benefits to parents with children, they actually haven't been encouraged to be taking those benefits, like, you know, maternity leave or even paternity care time off. Like, men who have a wife at home with a child, they almost never take paternity time off.
But in paternity time it's nice and it's important. But
It
it's,
is.
you know, it's like a couple of weeks when your baby gets born and then you're back.
Absolutely. It's not a lot. But so the government has in recent times been really aggressively pushing back against a lot of these different economic factors that play into South Koreans not feeling capable financially to actually take the time to have children and raise them. And so they've introduced a number of different measures and legislation in order to encourage couples to not only just have babies, but even to get together. The government has been hosting like dating, get to know you, what's that, like speed dating events and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
So people actually get married at all and actually have families. And so they have tried so many different things, because for a country to maintain its population without completely crumbling or requiring immigrants to maintain the population as time goes on, they need to have about a 2% birth rate. Hold on, I got that wrong. Off the top of my head, I don't remember exactly the proper statistic, but the thing is that South Korea is far below where it needs to be, and it's not able to sustain itself long term. And so the government sees this, they're like, we need to change something here. So they have just introduced so many different things that they can to encourage people to take advantage of these different services so they can have families. And in the recent couple of years, there's been a slight uptick since after COVID. And there's some critiques over this. Some people think that there were couples who were planning to get married, but then COVID put off their wedding plans, and now they're getting married and now they're having children a few years later. And that might just be the little boom that we're seeing here right now. And it might not last very long. It's probably still actually going down overall. So it's a little uncertain. It's a little unstable. Nobody really knows if this is going to continue to go up. Some people think it will for a bit. Some people think it's just a little moment and it'll continue to drop. But essentially, like, this country, if it's going to sustain itself, it needs to have more families. It needs to have more children. God has called us to be fruitful and multiply, but there are issues in the world structurally that can make things so difficult.
Look, that is very interesting. I visited Japan last year, and Japan they have a very similar problem. You know, their population is shrinking, and I think that there's some statistics say that by 2050 there'll be barely anyone left there in 50 years. You know, if that trend continues, you basically will have 90% of the population aged and just like a tiny bit of, very tiny amount of, people, young people that are able to work. And so basically the country as we know, particularly being the superpower as they are, both economically and military, which is both the case of Japan and South Korea. They're extremely successful countries. And while I was there, I was, seeing a few things. Number one, yes, you mentioned there is the cost of living. There's a lot of pressures in that regard. Yeah. Then there is this thing that even if they get married, in Japan at least, seeing the testimony, reading about the testimony of young ladies, young adult females, they say, look, even if I get married, my husband would have to work so much. And if I don't have a baby, I'll have to work so much.
Yeah.
That I'm going to see him like for what, 2-3 hours a week.
What's the point of getting married if you're not seeing him?
I'm not going to see him. And then if I become pregnant and have a child, and I cannot afford child care costs because it's exorbitant, again, and basically I'm going to be I'll be a single mother.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a single mother with a living and, father and that's around. Marriage just doesn't have time for me. And when they have the time, doesn't have the energy.
Yeah.
Because in Japan as well, and other things that people work so much. And that this is just the work. Plus the commuting, which is many, many long hours. By the time that they come home, they have no energy for anything.
Exactly.
And the very little energy that they have, they go out. They try to medicate that, I would use that word, with different kinds of addictions like video games or this or that or TV. So it is a very tough place. Plus there is also, culturally speaking, there is a sexist approach to men versus women and so on, and the expectation. So I think that a lot of women say, "Look, it's not worth for me. It's not worth the while. It's not. That is not the future that I want to be growing my kids in." So it would be very interesting to see if some of these countries can actually sustainably revert these trends, and it would be interesting to see.
Hey, look, I think this is...
I find it just fascinating. Sorry, go for it.
Well, hey, look, I think that the Sabbath would be a really good solution in these societies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It would be an amazing start.
Because, first of all, their major issue is the overwork problem, which completely eats into every part of their day and time, right?
Yeah.
If they had a Sabbath, that would give them time to connect as a family. That would give them time to
make babies,
honestly. Like, meet new people.
Yeah, I think that's
that would be a really great first step in the right direction for these societies.
I just find it fascinating that when countries are not having enough babies and the birth rate are going down, that the government says, okay, let's just do some laws and see if that's going to change. And I haven't seen them working really anywhere properly.
No, people still don't feel like they can take advantage of this because of the other societal, structural issues.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that people are waiting to say, oh, okay, I'm not going to have babies. Let me see if the government will do something that will change my mind.
Yeah, but God offers a solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, thanks for bringing that up. This is a fantastic story, and I wish that the baby of that tiny little town in South Korea, that they can grow up in wisdom and strength and in favor both with God and with men. It would be incredible.
Amen.
It would be a bit of a lonely childhood, I think, growing up, being the only kid in town.
Yeah.
The next kid, the next youngest kid being 17 years old.
Right.
But you know what? This is a start.
And you know what? His mum wasn't even South Korean. She's from Thailand or something.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively
now,
different.
Can you please give us a quiz answer?
Yeah, I can do that for you. So the answer for the question, in what hour did Jesus die, was the 9th hour. And that can be seen in Mark 15, verse 34.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
9th hour.
So what does that mean in regular terms? I think that's 3 p.m. because it's
They're saying here 3 p.m., yes.
9th hour of the day. So if the sun rises at 6 a.m., then the 6th hour would be midday, and then 3 hours after that, 9th hour would be 3 p.m. So that's how you measure. The interesting way that it's sometimes recorded in the Bible. So 3 p.m., that is also the same time we were talking about, I think it was yesterday or the day before, when Elijah did the sacrifice of his bull on top of Mount Carmel. That was at the 3rd hour, and that was also pointing towards Jesus' sacrifice. It was a very special time of sacrifice in the sacrificial system of the Israelites.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, let's move on. I want to talk to you about look, I find this story to be quite interesting. I want to see what you think about that.
Tell
one,
us.
Radio Friend and Lindsay and producer Tish. It's a story that got NATO allies squabbling while the Middle East burned. So the United States and France, they locked horns publicly over a spat over French airspace. Okay, so what happens that President Donald Trump is fuming, France is shrugging it off as business as usual, and it's shining a light on how isolated the United States is getting in its war with Iran regarding his NATO ally. So let's just break it down step by step, see what happened.
Sure.
So it all kicked off publicly on March 31st, so the day before yesterday, when Trump took to Truth Social, and he was slamming France as very unhelpful in the ongoing conflict. He claimed that Paris refused to let U.S. airplanes loaded with military supplies headed straight for Israel fly over French territory. And Trump says the USA will remember, all caps locked in, remember. So this came hot on the heels of Spain also fully closing its airspace to the U.S.-Iran related flights the day before. So basically the U.S., they were flying through Europe, and now they're going to have this massive detour, which is going to add a lot of fuel at all. But this is the twist. France says it's not a sudden ban or a full closure at all. France kind of denies they're not doing anything wrong. Officials in Paris told reporters that they are surprised by Trump's anger outburst. Their policy hasn't budged since day one of the war. Military flights need individual diplomatic overflight clearance on a case-by-case basis. So if you want to fly through France with a military aircraft, you just have to ask permission on a case-by-case basis. Some logistical support planes, like these tankers, transports, but not actually bombers and stuff, they are still landing in some of the French bases, but the fighter jets or arms delivery runs, they're getting scrutinized really hard, and some of them even got turned away over the weekend. And why is the friction? France drew a line kind of early on, and they're saying, look, we're not using our soil or our skies for direct attacks on Iran.
Why?
I believe, remember what happened last week when Trump decided to change his deadline on the 48 hours?
Okay.
Iran launched these ballistic missiles to the Diego Garcia Islands, 4,000 kilometers.
Yes, that's right.
Distance.
And now
Meaning that France is well within the radar. I don't think that they want to be giving the Iranians any reason to say, hey, now you're becoming legitimate targets because you're aiding attacks on our territory. Right. So here you go, a couple of bombs. And the French people were saying, look, we don't know if the U.S. are going to help us. If there's a missile coming, we don't know if you're ready to cope with that. Probably they're not. And even if they would be, look, there's a lot of risks there.
Okay, so instead
it's not an easy thing to stop a ballistic missile from falling.
Instead of supporting the guys who are probably going to help more, they're running scared of the guys that
they say, look, this is not our fight.
It's not our fight. We don't want to get involved. But it means that they're also giving more power to Iran by stepping back and not allowing the US to use that space.
Oh, yeah. So the US have to detour, and Donald Trump was not only he was not happy, yesterday Trump was making some remarks saying, you know what, I think we're going to be leaving NATO.
Trump's leaving NATO?
No, he wants to. So one of the reporters says, hey, would you be reconsidering the U.S. participation on NATO? And Trump would say, we actually beyond reconsidering.
Okay.
In the sense if you ask for me, yes. That being said, what is stopping that is I think in 2022, there was a U.S. senator that passed a bill saying that the United States is not allowed to withdraw themselves from NATO. Like the president has not the power anymore to withdraw the United States from NATO unilaterally. He needs Congress approval. He needs 2/3 of the Senate to do that. And Mike Schumer, which is like the leader of the Democrats in the Senate, he wrote a tweet saying, look, Donald Trump is angry because, he's upset that, our European allies do not want to join him in his war of choice that had nothing to do with them. But I just wanted to remind Mr. Trump that, and I'm just paraphrasing here. I just wanted to remind President Trump that he doesn't have the power to withdraw the U.S. from the alliance. It has to have a 2/3 majority in the Senate for that to happen. And guess who was the senator that sponsored that law?
Was it him?
No, Marco Rubio.
Okay. Which
is currently the Secretary of Foreign Affairs of the United States, of Donald Trump. Like pretty much the second man.
Sure.
Of the Trump administration.
Interesting.
And then Max Schumer was even kind of, poking him a little bit and saying, hey, by the way, thank you, Senator Marco Rubio, for passing that law. back in the days.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that is happening there. But that reminded me of a very similar episode in the Bible.
Radio.
Actually, so that's what I wanted to talk about. So there is a passage in the Bible, in the book of Numbers, chapter 20, where the Israelites, they had been, they had been wandering already in the desert for about 40 years after they had escaped Egypt. They were camping at a place called Kadesh, and that was on the edge of the territory of a country called Edom. Edom is not modern day southern Jordan.
Okay.
And then Moses sends messengers to the king of Edom with a very respectful, very respectful language, saying, hey, guys, we are your relatives. We're descendants of Esau and Jacob. We have been suffering in Egypt. God has helped us. Now, we just want to pass through your land on the main road to the promised land. Is that okay? That was the main road towards the land where God wanted to take them to. Yeah. And they even said, look, we won't step off the highway. We won't drink your water or eat your food without paying like full price. So look, no trouble. We just want safe passage.
Yeah.
So Moses was being like humble, he's being diplomatic, was saying, hey, cousins, can we just go through your country? Like, no troubles here. But the king of Edom shoots back and said, no, you're not passing. Get out of here. Otherwise, if you come here, if you step foot into my country, we're going to draw the sword and attack you.
Wow.
Why did they do that? Look, I'm not too sure. Maybe there's no reason. Maybe they didn't like it. Maybe they were afraid.
Like the idea of millions of people coming through as a potential army. They probably just didn't want a Trojan War situation.
Maybe they didn't trust Moses. Maybe they didn't want to get indisposed with the Egyptians, like the French don't want to get indisposed with the Iranians. We don't know. But it was very interesting to see what the Israelites did. You know what they did? Well, they try again. Same thing. Say, maybe let's just ask again politely. Maybe there was some kind of mistake in the communication. Again, the Edomites refused safe passage for the Israelites. You know what they decided to do?
What?
Okay, not going to force the issue. They just took the long detour around Edom's territory. It added, kilometers and time and hardships, but they honored the refusal.
Did God say anything about the Edomites later down the track because of this behavior?
He did. God was not happy with the Edomites at all.
Yeah.
And God says, look, God gave them a hard time, saying, hey, like when your brothers needed you, you're just like refusing them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I actually think that what Moses did, not forcing the issue, because he could have. He had like a lot of people. He could have forced the issue. But God did not ask Moses to force the issue. Moses didn't force the issue.
Yeah.
And I think there's a spiritual application here. The spiritual application is this. Look, we ask things politely. People say no. We detour.
We respect.
And we respect. So respect people's boundaries.
Yeah.
Even when they're not necessarily reasonable.
Yeah. And when it makes our lives a little bit harder.
Yeah. We are supposed to expect. And also a reminder that sometimes the straight path is not the one that God has for us. Sometimes like we want to do something like there's a very clear straight path right in front of us. Boom, like this. But then some people are being unreasonable. They're not allowing us to go to this straight path. And, look, what do? We respect the boundaries, take the detour. Perhaps God actually wants us to go through the detour, not through the straight path.
Interesting. Yeah.
Isn't it interesting?
Have you ever had that experience?
Oh, I definitely have had that experience many times, having to go to like massive detours.
Yeah.
But you know what? Now that I come out of these detours, actually, I learned that, there were some pretty amazing views on the detours.
Okay.
And I learned a lot of things.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
Now I have the honor and the privilege to interview Greg Bradley from Destiny Rescue. Greg, good morning to you. It's great to have you on the Breakfast Show this morning.
I'm back, yes.
Okay, now we can hear you loud and clear. So you're telling about Destiny Rescue. We were having some technical issues before, but can you tell us a little bit again what is the mission of that organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So Destiny Rescue exists to rescue children from sexual exploitation and human trafficking and equip them to stay free. And we started when an Australian man heard about this issue overseas in Thailand and realized there weren't many people doing something about it. Being a Christian, he prayed, he sought God to see what his response should be. And he felt like God spoke to him to create this organization to respond to the issue of children being exploited. And as we've learned over the years, this issue is happening right around the world. And Destiny Rescue, 25 years later, we've now rescued over 25,000 individuals and equipped them to stay free with our aftercare support.
Wow, that is amazing. So rescue, and I can only imagine how difficult it would be to rescue each single one of these 25,000 individuals. But let me just start with asking about your story. How did you get involved, and how did that become an area that you felt passionate about, or you felt that you needed to do something about?
Yeah, over 20 years ago, I was working in missions. I was working in international development. And the first time I personally heard about human trafficking, I was involved in the Boxing Day tsunami, which everyone will remember, one of the most significant tragedies of our generation. And I was a first responder. And one day we had a briefing. That briefings were coordinated by the United Nations. And at the briefing, it was shared with us that, in fact, children who were vulnerable, parents were missing or had perhaps passed away, these children were being taken and trafficked. It completely shocked me that this issue existed. At that time, I thought this was a unique incident. And through my career in working in international development and working with some great organizations around the world, I came to find that this issue was actually very, very significant. On one particular visit overseas to Nepal, I was visiting incredible work in community development, schools, education, healthcare clinics, income generation. And as we traveled from one project to the next, we sort of drove through this part of town, and there was a compound. It looked from the outside almost like a prison. There were walls and razor wire on top, and through the gate, I saw children around the age of my own sons who were working, in fact, carrying bricks on their head. And I said to the country manager for this organization, "Stop the car. What's going on here?" I had a bunch of questions. And he explained to me the complexities of the situation. He said, it's it's cultural, it's intergenerational, it's driven by poverty, and these children are working off a debt that was accrued by their parents. And I asked him, what are we doing to help? And he said, it's really difficult. And that was a moment for me as I looked at a boy that was around 7 years old, carrying bricks on his head. I wanted to learn more. And as I did, I found out this wasn't an isolated incident, that there were children in domestic servitude. There were children working in agriculture, in brick factories like this one there. And most shockingly, children who were in forced commercial sexual exploitation, which is in fact the issue that Destiny Rescue works to address.
Well, it's so very heartbreaking, isn't it? It's just, just by imagining the story already makes my heart break. Imagine living it and seeing it with your own eyes. So you said, look, I want to do something about it. What happened then? What were the next, those next steps? Did you quit your job and say, look, I'm going to start working for organizations that deal with child sex trafficking more directly? How did it all work with you?
Yeah, look, my journey, I think for each of us, the question is exactly as you say. It's what can we do? What's in our hands? And I was already working in that international development space with a Christian organization. And in fact, I started developing and working on campaigns to raise awareness about the issue. And many times the first step for people is learning about an issue and that it exists. And I know many times when I tell these stories and share the statistics that over 1 million children are trapped in this situation right now, people are shocked. And so through raising awareness, we start to create action. So I was involved in several large campaigns, running workshops in schools with young people in churches. And it was around 15 years ago that I personally learned about the work of Destiny Rescue. I wasn't working for them at the time, but I had friends that were working overseas in Thailand with them and working in Australia. And my journey took me to eventually come on staff and be working full-time with Destiny Rescue, and even to go and visit and learn and do what I call a ride along, to actually see the rescue work in action. And that is shocking as well. But what is so hope-filling is meeting the survivors, seeing the incredible support, and as our name suggests, realizing that we can rewrite and change the destinies of these children with the right support mechanisms.
That's amazing. So tell me a little bit about how these rescue operations work, because surely there will be, we would imagine, perhaps police cops storming into a building, rescuing the children, but that's not the reality. Particularly if you're working towards helping children in a foreign country. So how does it work? How do you identify these children, and how do you actually ultimately rescue them from the hands of their captors, if I can use that word?
Yeah, there's really three main situations that we've identified where we're rescuing children. So the first is border intervention. And oftentimes we find in countries like Nepal, we'll find children who are in the process of being trafficked from Nepal into India. Mm-hmm. And essentially they're being transported in a vehicle of some sort. And our team are empowered by the government to stop and question and interrogate and identify where victims are in the process of being trafficked. And we're rescuing hundreds of predominantly teenage girls that are in the process of being trafficked in Nepal. 99% of them we are able to get to before they're exploited. So that's really encouraging and motivating for the teams. Secondly, we work in covert situations where we need to build rapport with the survivors and understand that context. So that could be in bars, karaoke clubs, situations where children are being tricked and forced to be sold for exploitation. In those situations, we work very closely with law enforcement. We have formal MOUs in most of the countries we work in, and we are, in fact, collaborating closely with law enforcement. In many cases, local law enforcement in these countries, while they have a heart and a desire to stop this issue, they may lack the capabilities or the resources. And one of our staff, for example, Matthew Valentine, he comes from New Zealand. He was a police detective for 15 years. Wow. And he felt called to this work because he constantly saw the criminal side of the issue, and he wanted to help survivors. And so he's in fact now based in Thailand, and he provides incredible capability and support to help identify where children are being exploited online, and oftentimes they're advertised for sale on platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and Matt and the team will work to locate where those children are, take the evidence to law enforcement, and then in collaboration implement a raid to remove the children and see the perpetrators arrested and brought to justice.
And Greg, are there countries that are easier to work with, like in terms of the law enforcement, than others? Because I imagine that different countries would also have different. How do you navigate these challenges? And can you give us, like, perhaps which country you find it's probably one of the easiest or the best one to collaborate with?
Yeah, look, we have great relationships in many countries, and in fact, collaboration and working together is critical to success. We can't go and do it on our own, but two of the countries that come to mind are Thailand and the Philippines, and we work at the highest level of law enforcement there with our relationships, and we need to be very careful and strategic in each country and jurisdiction that we're working with the right people, that they're well equipped and well resourced, and so yeah, Thailand and the Philippines. In fact, we have in our team in Bangkok, Thailand, we have Thai law enforcement from their cyber crimes law enforcement division who are embedded and working together in the same office space as our team to work live on cases to rescue children.
Oh, wow. Amazing. So shout out to the Philippines and Thailand law enforcement there for facilitating that incredible work. And without naming names, because I don't want to put you in any diplomatic situation here, but what are some of the challenges that you find with the countries that are least, let's say, that are hardest to cooperate with? What kinds of issues arise that you find it makes Destiny Rescue's job harder?
Yeah, look, there's in some countries, and again, I appreciate your sensitivity. We want to be careful not to name names or jeopardize our work. But in some countries, there can be a denial that the issue exists, and that may be because there could be different people in the country that are involved or profiting from this issue. So we need to be, very careful and very sensitive to those issues. But we, look, we've been doing this for 25 years now, and I will be honest, in the early days, it was an emerging issue. People were still understanding the challenges of human trafficking and how to address the issue. And we had a lot to learn. And fast forward 25 years, we have incredible capability across our organization. In fact, I feel that we have a unique gifting and calling to be able to identify where and how children are being trafficked and exploited, and to actually work collaboratively to get them out. And I think 25,000 individuals who have been set free. And we know from our follow-up and our aftercare support that over 86% of those individuals remain free. And so it works. And that's so important to us.
I'm loving it, because it's kind of like, the CIA and the special forces in a Christian church had a baby, and it's like destiny rescue. Just like, that's amazing. Yeah, so can you tell us?
That's great.
Yeah, right. Because there's this intelligence work. There's this cooperation work. There's a lot of a lot of even live action, really, because it is. I'm very sure that these people, these perpetrators that are exploiting children, they don't want to let them go. Kind of like Pharaoh in the Bible, don't wanting to let the Israelites go. So it needs God's intervention and the intervention of people that are willing to take the risk to and to do something for these children. Greg, can you tell me a little bit about a story that you carry with you, perhaps a story of success of a child that was rescued and it's now gone the full cycle, and it's been reintegrated and healed from that situation? It's perhaps doing something to prevent that from happening again. What stories of success come to your mind?
Yeah, I'd love to. And, for anyone who has children in your life, I have 4 children ranging in age from 11 to 20. And it's often my daughter, as I'm putting her to bed, as we're reading a book, as we're just doing something that it connects me and my heart to these children who often have no one, no father, no protector, no mother who's able to keep them from this harm. And so each story is precious. We talk about 25,000, but each story is so precious. And the one that really stands out to me, and I'm using a different name for her because we always want to protect their identity.
Yeah, of course.
It's Abigail. And Abigail's from East Africa. And all you need to know about what she suffered was she was horrifically abused and sold from the ages of 8 till 17. And I don't want to go into detail about that because it's just horrific. You can imagine what she would have suffered. At the age of 17, she met the team from Destiny Rescue who offered her a way out of that situation. She was living in poverty. She was really caring for herself, trying to provide meals for herself and her siblings. And she was accepted into the Destiny Rescue after rescue program and embarked on what we call her Freedom Plan. And that's a tailored program to work with survivors to help remove the vulnerabilities that cause them to be exploited in the first place, which is so important to have a lasting and sustainable impact. And Abigail entered that program, and like so many who are given a new chance on life, she was zealous, she was passionate, she wanted to rewrite her future, and my goodness, did she. She was identified as someone who had skill in beauty therapy and hairdressing, and she went through a training program, given counseling and support and care along the way, and she excelled at that, and she graduated from the program. She then went on to start her own little business as a hairdresser, and she was so good at that others came to her and wanted to learn from her, so she started teaching others how to become hairdressers. Now she has 2 businesses, a hairdressing business and a teaching business, training others. And what's incredible to me is she has gone from a victim to a survivor survivor to an overcomer. And Abigail is actually part of our team now, and she works with the aftercare program in East Africa. And you can imagine, on day one, survivors are coming into this program. They're scared, they're uncertain, they've suffered harm, they don't know who to trust. And Abigail stands up and looks them in the eye and says, I know how you feel.
Wow.
I know how scared you are because I've been there. And they look at her, and she's an example of what can happen when the right support is provided. They know that she's done it. They can do it too.
Wow.
And she has this incredible faith. She has this incredible passion to release others from what she suffered.
That is amazing. What a beautiful story, and what an example of redemption, of faith, of cooperation. With God working in the heart while His children are working with the hands there in trying to liberate these children. So wow, Greg, it's a very, I would imagine it would be a very rewarding job, at the same time a very heavy job to have, because you're dealing with heartbreaking stories on constantly. So we'll definitely be praying for you and for all of those who are working with Destiny Rescue. Which leads me to my last question to you. How can we support? How can we be involved? How can we pray? What can we pray for? Or can we support financially or with time? What are our options here if you want to, if we have this in our heart and we want to do something as well to make a difference?
Yeah, I just encourage everyone, if this is something that's moved your heart today, just consider what you have in your hands. I love the story in John chapter 6 of the boy with the loaves and the fishes, and he just brings what he has, and it's amazing how it can be multiplied to make a difference. You don't know, it might be a conversation with someone, it might be initiating something through your work or your church or in a community that you're a part of. And as you said, Skafy, prayer is so critically important. We don't just deal with something physical. There is a spiritual element to what we deal with. But I'd encourage everyone, go and check out destinyrescue.org. If you're a church, you can consider getting your church involved with Rescue Sunday. If you're passionate about fitness, you could do something like Tread on Trafficking, where you can move, you can run, you can do a physical challenge and raise awareness and funds. But there's something that everyone can do, and your prayers are so greatly appreciated. We feel that support every day. On average right now, we're rescuing 16 individuals. Usually 10 of those are children under the age of 18. And it's a daily battle for the teams out there on the front lines, and your support and your prayers are so appreciated.
Amazing. Greg, thank you so much for sharing with us a little bit of the incredible work that you and the rest of the team do at Destiny Rescue. And if anyone wants to have any questions and you want to participate again, what was the website that they can come in for more information?
Yeah, that's destinyrescue.org, O-R-G.
destinyrescue.org. Thank you very much, Greg. We're looking forward to have you again with us next time. Thank you so much for bringing that awareness to myself, to our listeners, and keep up with this amazing work, this amazing ministry that is so life-changing and so beautiful. It's really the gospel in practice, in action, in my point of view. God bless you, your family, your work, everybody at Destiny Rescue, and we're looking forward to chat with you again next time.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. Appreciate you.
Thanks for being a part of the Faith FM family. Join our community on Facebook or get in touch at 1-800-FAITH-FM.